Shalom and welcome to Wisdom into Our Ministries. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm just doing a teaching today. I was studying, researching on some of the stuff that I'm learning this year about the commandments. What we're doing in Wisdom and Torah this year, you may be interested. We are focusing on each one of the 613 commandments in each Torah portion. And the whole idea behind this is that I think it's very important that we focus on learning the commandments as we read the Torah portion. Many times we read it, but we never really focus on the commandments inside each Torah portion. And honestly, we miss a lot. In this week's Torah portion, and Torah portion Emor, we have 63 commandments. I have the list right here. We had 51 commandments in last week's Torah portion. That was Leviticus 19 and 20. And this week we have 63 commandments in the chapters 21 to 25. To 24. We have 63 commandments. That is 10% of the 613 commandments. We have 10% of the commandments in those chapters specifically this week. I was having a very interesting conversation on text on Facebook about a conference that I'm doing in Shavuot in June. And it was kind of cool because we were exchanging, not at least on my side, it was not a debate or an argument. It was just exchanging on biblical principles. And I thought, you know what? I'm sure many other people have the same question. So why not just do a short teaching on it? And I present the information, present the facts. Don't believe what I say. Validate everything I say. First of all, let's talk about the commandment of Shavuot and to celebrate the feast. We know that. When we go to Leviticus chapter 23, we are told to proclaim the feast, not to decree the feast, not to change anything on it. And I would explain why. Leviticus 23, verse 1 and 2 says this, "And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, the appointed feast of the Lord, which you shall proclaim." That's a very important word. "These are my holy convocations." And then it goes on to Sabbath, Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, then goes into Pentecost, trumpets, Day of Atonement, tabernacles. Then, at the end of the verse 44, and at the end of the chapter, the last verse, it's a very interesting language that is using. And it says, "So Moses, who was the head of the whole leadership in the tabernacle in the wilderness, declared to the children of Israel the feast of the Lord." I want you to notice the difference between proclaiming and declaring, because the feasts of God fall under the jurisdiction of the priests or the priestly protocols, due to the fact that every single one of them include sacrifices, as we see in the book of Numbers, chapter 28. When you study this chapter 23, please consider reading Numbers 28 alongside of it, because sometimes some of us, we miss the fact that each feast or holy convocation includes sacrifices. The moment that includes sacrifices, that falls under the realm of the Kohanim, the priest, the temple protocol. We know that because in Numbers chapter 18, in Numbers 18, it says, "And the Lord said to Aaron, You and your sons and your father's house with you shall bear the iniquity related to the sanctuary. You and your sons with you shall bear the iniquity associated with your priesthood." So they bear the responsibility of any wrongdoing. If they mess up the service, they are responsible. They are the people who are to teach us holy and profane, as we will see in chapter 10 of the book of Leviticus, verse 8, all the way to verse 11, says, "And the Lord said to Aaron, saying, Do not drink wine or intoxicating drink, you nor your sons with you, when you go into the tabernacle of meeting, lest you die. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations." Why? "That you may distinguish between the holy and the unholy, between the unclean and the clean, and that you may teach the children of Israel all the statutes which the Lord has spoken to them by the hand of Moses. So the duty of the priestly order is to distinguish holy and profane, to establish calendars, because that's who had the jurisdiction. How do I prove that? When we go to Numbers chapter 28, and we look at the new moon celebration, for example, you cannot celebrate Passover until the new moon is sighted. But because Passover is connected with the Aviv, even though you see the new moon, if the Aviv, the barley, is not ready, then you are not celebrating the month of Nisan. It's designed in that fashion because, according to the commandment, it must happen in the spring. Okay, so if the barley is not ready, it's not spring yet. Okay, so this is a temple protocol. You can only declare the new moon, and people who declare the new moon, because it involves sacrifices, falls only the jurisdiction of the temple protocol and the Sanhedrin council that was composed of 70 elders plus the Nasi, and there was 23 priests, 23 Levites, 23 Israelites. So we have order. Okay. In Numbers 28 verse 11 says, at the beginning of your months, you shall present a burnt offering to the Lord, 2 young bulls, 1 ram, 7 lambs of the first year without blemish. So we know that it included a 1 kid of the goat for sin offering, drink offerings, bread offerings, and all the animals on Rosh Chodesh, new moon celebration. So in the temple, when the temple of the tabernacle was established, then when the new moon was sighted, and you went to the protocol that the Mishnah talks about the Rosh Chodesh, explaining how it was done in the time of the temple period, then you know that it included sacrifices. So it was not just sighting the moon. You sighted the moon, but you went to Jerusalem, because it's out of Jerusalem that you declare these things, not from any other place. It's from the place that God has chosen. Out of Zion shall come forth the Torah and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. So all the feasts take place from Jerusalem, and specifically when the temple was established. Okay, so once you have the witnesses, they are interrogated by the Sanhedrin council, and once the Sanhedrin council was satisfied with the sighting, with the Aviv, and also with the whole protocol, they declared Kadosh, holy month. The moment they declare the month holy, then the priests will begin to do the service in the temple and doing the sacrifices. Okay, it could only be declared in the morning. You cannot declare the new moon in the evening. Okay, remember that. The Sanhedrin council never met at night, only during the daytime. So you sight the moon at night when the sun goes down. We get it. Okay, then that evening you start walking towards Jerusalem. In the morning, the Sanhedrin council will meet, and then they will declare the new moon acceptable, and then from there, once they declare that the new moon was sighted, they put the sacrifices, they send the messengers to all the bonfires to the dispersion. That's why we have a 2-day celebration of the feast in the dispersion. Due to the lack of communication at the time, they didn't have Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or Zoom. So therefore, they needed to do different type of communication so that everyone would get the message in time for the feast. So this is a whole mechanism that the Mishnah allow us to get that information. This is how they did in the first century. This is not man-made words. This was written to help us understand the way that it was done in the first century or in the time of the temple period. When they were in Babylon, there was a remnant of people in Jerusalem. Okay? So therefore, some of the things were still gone from Jerusalem so they can celebrate the feast. But they could not eat the Passover outside of Jerusalem because Deuteronomy 16 says that only in the place where the Lord has chosen, there you shall eat the Passover lamb. That's why it's called a Korban Pesach. Korban Pesach, the lamb offering has to be offered in the temple by the persons who come up, and then they eat it within the city walls of Jerusalem based on Deuteronomy 16, verse 5. And you may not sacrifice the Passover within any of your gates which the Lord your God gives you, but at the place where the Lord your God has chosen to make his name abide. There you shall sacrifice the Passover at twilight, at the going down of the sun at the time that came out of Egypt. So we know that already. Okay, so later in that chapter, chapter 16, verse 18, God gives instructions to start law and administration of the judges. This is something that we must understand in order to see if we can bring the first fruits. The question was, should we bring the first fruits in Shavuot today, here in America? And my answer was no, because there are prescribed legal ways that includes the temple that will not allow us to fully observe it. We still commemorate it. We set aside the day. It's still a holy convocation, a special Sabbath. We meet together. We praise God. It's not really a liturgy other than the Siddur that tells us they do the morning prayers, the afternoon prayers, because during Shavuot, Pentecost, they were doing the morning service and the afternoon service, and in between they were doing the Musaf. Musaf are the extra sacrifices that I will read to you in a minute. But in Deuteronomy 16, verse 18 says this: You shall appoint judges and officers in all your gates, which the Lord your God gives you according to your tribes, and they shall judge the people and just judgment. Okay, you should not pervert justice. You should not show partiality. It's talking about the elders of the Sanhedrin Council. You had not only 70 plus 1, 71, 23, and 3. And then they had also local leaders for civil matters, things that were not dealing with holiness of the temple. When it dealt with anything with sacrifices, with the temple, with the feast, and on levels of the penalty of death, then you have to go to Jerusalem in order to present the case to the Sanhedrin Council, and there they will tell you what to do. Guys, this is law. Okay, this is a judicial body. Okay, so let's go to the book of Deuteronomy, Leviticus. We're going to talk about Feast of Weeks. Okay, which is Pentecost. Now, what we need to understand here is, are there sacrifices being offered on that day? Okay, it says, and you shall come for yourselves from the day of the Sabbath, after the Sabbath, or the first day of your bringings, of the wave offering sheaf. There you shall have 7 weeks. Until the day after the 7th Sabbath, you shall count 50 days. Then you shall present a new grain offering for the Lord. You shall bring from your dwelling places for your dwellings for a wave offering 2 loaves of bread made with 2/10 of an ephah, finely milled flour. They must be baked with leaven, the first fruit belonging to the Lord. Okay, fruits belonging to the Lord. And in addition to the bread, you shall present 7 yearlings, male lambs without defect, with 1 young bull, 1 ram. They shall be a burnt offering for the Lord, with a grain offering of the libations, an offering made by fire, and a pleasing fragrance to the Lord. And you shall offer the he-goat of sin offering, 2 yearling male lambs, as a sacrifice of fellow offerings, and the priest shall wave them with the bread of the first fruits as a wave offering before the Lord, in addition to the 2 male lambs, that they shall be holy for the Lord, for the priest. And you shall make a proclamation on this very same day, and it shall be a holy assembly for you. You shall not do any regular work. This is a lasting statute in all your dwellings throughout your generations. When you reap, watch this, when you reap the harvest of your land, this cannot take place outside of Jerusalem, outside of Israel. This commandment is for the land of Israel. You must not finish the edge of your fields in your reaping, and you must not glean from the remnant of your harvest, and you shall leave them behind for the needy and the alien. I am the Lord your God. Got it. So as you can see, this particular commandment can only fully be observed in the land of Israel. In the land of Israel, you have what is called the 7 species. When we go to the Mishnah, which is basically the compendium, how they did this in the temple, we need this resource to get more information. Which first fruits? Do they bring anything to the temple? No, the leadership of the Sanhedrin Council, the judicial body, they've decided that the 7 species that the Bible talks about, those are the ones that you are to bring to the temple on the first fruits on Shavuot. Today, we cannot bring those here in America, but we can still celebrate the commemorating of the giving of the Torah. We can celebrate how Shavuot was commemorated in Israel, but we cannot observe this particular command because we're not in the land. This is for the land. People need to understand that this is not limiting you from observing the commandment. It's only bringing order to where? A geographical location. So let's read in the Mishnah, which is Bikurim, is everything that happened in the temple in regards to first fruits. Okay? It says, these are those who bring the first fruits of the produce of their land and recite the confession, I declare this day, that you find in Deuteronomy 26. You have to have a confession. Okay? So as you keep going through it, you'll be reading about who can bring it, who cannot bring it. So there are rules and laws according to how and who can bring them to the land, to the temple. You have to present them in the temple. Why? Because it was a holy convocation. It was a feast of God. It's a tribute to the Lord. It also served as a tithe. And that was given to the Levites and then given to the priests and then also for the needy. So therefore you bring it to take care of the priesthood, of their job, and maintain them and get them to continue the offerings throughout the whole year if you brought money or if you brought the fruits. Okay? Let's continue. When you go down, let me read 1-2. For what reason does he not bring them? Because it is written, you shall bring the first fruits of your land. Deuteronomy of your land. Deuteronomy 26:2. Then you shall take from the first fruit of all the fruit of the ground that you harvest from your land that the Lord has given you. That is not America, guys. I'm sorry, it's not. The context is the land of Israel. Okay? And then you should go up to the place that the Lord your God will choose to make his name dwell there. So let's just say that you just say, no, it's America. According to the commandment, then that means you have to get your first fruits and get on a plane and go to Jerusalem. And then there you have to present it. Do we have a temple? Are there the offerings? Do we have a Sanhedrin? Do we have an altar? Do we have a high priest in Jerusalem today? No. Therefore, those things limit us the full ability to take the first fruits of the land and present it. We can't. And even if the temple and all that stuff will still be it will be standing today, if we live in America, we are not to take the first fruits from here and take it over there because it's only for the land, the 7 species. Okay? There are laws that apply to certain locations. In the Bikurim, the Mishnah Bikurim 1:3, they do not bring the first fruits from any other than the 7 kinds for which the land was noted. Wheat, barley, grapes, figs, pomegranates, olives, used for oil, and dates for honey. Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 8. To the land of honey and barley and vines and fig trees and pomegranate trees, to the land of olive trees, olive oil, and honey. That's where they get that from. It's not an invention of the rabbis. They get those 7 spices, the 7 kinds of fruits that the land gives. Then those are the ones you bring primarily to the temple for first fruits, because they're the primary, types of crops that the land provides. It becomes a tribute. Okay, remember in the ancient world they used to do fertility rituals. Here God is saying you bring everything the land provides, and instead of offering it to Astarte or Asherah or Baal, you bring it to my temple as a tribute to me, and I will take care of my priests and my Levites and the needy with that tribute. I will do righteousness and justice. Let's continue. It says, not from dates on the hill country, not from fruits of the valley, not from olives used for oil, which are not the choicest kinds. They do not bring first fruits before Pentecost. The men of Mount Seboim brought their first fruit before Pentecost, but the priests did not accept the first fruits among them. Because of the verse that is in the Torah, you shall keep the feast of harvest, Pentecost, of the first fruits of your labor which you sow in your field. They did not allow it because in Exodus 23:16, you shall keep the feast of harvest with the first fruits of your work. In other words, that's how you keep the day. On that day, you bring the first fruits. And this is important that we learn. There is an order of doing things in the Bible. And sadly, many of the people who are having issues with this are those who do not study the temple protocol, are not aware of the legality of the Torah commandments. And this is the reason why I recommend the temple service. And I recommend everything dealing with the temple. Guys, Sabbath is connected with the temple because it included sacrifices. Passover is all connected with the temple. Bikurim is all connected with the temple. Pentecost, temple. The wheat harvest. Okay, then we have Yom Teruah. It's connected with the temple. That's the name. Yom Teruah is the name of the service that they will do during the day on Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year, for the counting of the Shemitah and the Jubilees. Okay, Yom Kippur is also connected with the temple because all the offerings that the high priest needed to do on behalf of the whole community. And Sukkot is all about the last. It says it right there. Let me go here. Watch this. If you read the latter part of that verse, 23:16 says, "And you will keep the feast of harvest gathering when the year goes out, when you gather your work from the field." In other words, the end of the agricultural cycle was Sukkot. That's when you have the last in gathering before winter. Okay, this is important. The feasts are agricultural in nature, but they're also interconnected with the temple service because everything from the feast, the agriculture, serve as also tribute. The connection is clear. Animal offerings and the first fruits was connected because all is part of the blessing of the land. He provides the animals, he provides the fruit, he provides your children. So you redeem your firstborn, you bring forth the best of your animals, and you bring forth the best of your first fruits. This is all connected with the temple. If we don't study the temple, we're going to create new calendars, and we're going to create new feast dates, and we're going to change everything that God prescribed. We, in the dispersion, we do not have the authority to determine calendars. Not because we don't have the capabilities of it, not because we don't have the desire to obey, but because it's connected with the protocol of the temple. There's an order of offerings. If you go to Deuteronomy, Numbers 28, you see that. Deuteronomy 28, I'm going to put it in the Bible here so you can see it with me. You see? Numbers 28. Go here for the Festival of Weeks. It has everything. And on the day of the first fruits, when you are presenting, let me go there real quick. And on the day of your first fruits, see, on the day of your first fruits, that could only happen when the temple's standing. When you are presenting a new offering for the Lord during your Festival of Weeks, you will have a holy convocation. That's a special Sabbath. You will not do any work. You will present a burnt offering for fragrance appeasement to the Lord. 2 bulls, 1 ram, 7 lambs, and the first year. And the grain offering, the fine flour, meal flour mixed with oil. 3/10 of each bull, 3/10 for each ram, 1/10 for each male lamb, and a male goat to make atonement for you. In addition to the continual burnt offering and its grain offering, you will offer the without defect in the libation. And this is the reason when you read this, when you study the Siddur, when you follow the Siddur of Shavuot, what they do, they are following the pattern of the temple service. They do the morning Tamid, the Shaharit, morning blessings, preparation, and then you go to the Amidah, what the priest will do when they're presenting the incense, and then you do the offerings. You go through the whole thing. It tells you all the psalms, the Hallel psalms that were sung on this day. And then you do the Musaf prayers. That represents the sacrifices that took place. And then you do the afternoon prayers. That's why the Siddur is formulated and structured in the same way that the commandment says. So, as much as we would like to say we can have the first fruits of our land and bring it for Pentecost, if you do that, you said it's symbolism. Guys, this is a symbolism. We know we're not in the land, but we are practicing. I have a farm, and I have certain fruits. I want to bring it to the Lord as a symbolism, as a memorial to what they did. It's not the same. But you cannot say that you are keeping this commandment because this commandment is specifically for the land of Israel. It doesn't mean that we don't have the desire to keep it. It's just that we're not able to do it because we are not in the land of Israel with a temple, with a priesthood, with a Sanhedrin, with an altar, with sacrifices, because they are all interconnected. Hopefully that'll make sense. Let me finish with this. Leviticus chapter sorry, Ezekiel 44. Verse 23 and 24 says, and they shall teach my people the difference between the holy and the unholy, and cause them to discern between the unclean and the clean. In controversy they shall stand as judges, and judge it according to my judgments. They shall keep my laws, my statutes, and all my appointed meetings, and they shall hallow my Sabbath. This is the duty of the priest. Verse 15. And the priests, the Levites, the sons of Zadok, they shall keep my charge in my sanctuary when the children of Israel went astray from me. They shall come near to me and minister to me, and they shall stand before me to stand before the fat. Okay? And the blood, says the Lord God. So as we see, the priests were in charge of teaching the law, the commandments, the statutes, clean and unclean, the feast, and the Sabbath. And that came from the temple. Today we don't have that. We have the Torah, we have the commandments, we have the Mishnah, which are the rulings of how they did this in the first century at the time of Yeshua the Messiah. So we have to look at a broader perspective and stop trying to reinvent the wheel and do things according to the imagination of our own hearts, because there are certain laws that are only limited to where you're located. And there are laws for the land, there are laws for women, there are laws for men and in Israel. So may the Lord bless you and keep you guys. Thank you for joining me, and I pray this short teaching was a blessing to you. Shalom.